have to really start with sort of the managerial merry-go-round, and we have to start with Chelsea, because yesterday there was a number of reports stating that De Zerbi was going to end up being the guy. 24 hours later, it has now been confirmed by Fabrizio Romano that Chelsea and Enzo Maresca have agreed all the personal terms. Leicester have given permission to Chelsea to formally speak to their manager, and it does appear now that Chelsea will be appointing Maresca on a 2-year deal. So a lot of Chelsea fans making out that Poch wasn't really the guy because they only gave him a 2-year deal. This man is also going to be on a 2-year deal. I haven't spoken to Pete in a while, so I want to throw this to Pete. What's your reaction to this in terms of getting rid of Poch and then going for a very inexperienced championship manager in Enzo Maresca?
I'm not going to lie. I was actually quite shocked. I was when I first heard it come through the other day when they were first linked. I was thinking, like, how have they even come to this decision? How have they even thought that this guy was even sort of capable of taking the reins at Chelsea? Considering that people ummed and ahed about De Zerbi being linked. Some people and ahed when Potter was given the job. Some people and ahed when Pochettino was given the job. What for then him to be considered, and now effectively you're telling us that it's looking like it's a done deal. I'm absolutely stunned. I'm not going to lie. For me, a guy that's not managed in the top league of any of the top 5 divisions in Europe, and only just been promoted with Leicester, and that wasn't plain sailing at all. I think it's a massive risk. I'm not going to lie. I'm not surprised Chelsea fans are not wanting to come on today, because I think they're probably feeling it right now as well. Because from a season, particularly the back end of the season, where they finished very strong and with assurance, there's now big questions that are going to be asked of the manager and of this group of players going into next season. And you could argue there's now more pressure on Chelsea going into this season, next season, than there was the season just gone.
There certainly could be. And Will, the other day you said that sacking Poch was a sign of standards, which I get your logic on that. And this isn't a dig at that opinion, because they're saying you didn't achieve. Chelsea briefed the media and said, well, you didn't achieve. We went for a data review. What do you make of this appointment that from this particular moment in time looks a certainty?
Yeah, so when I first heard like Enzo Mascherano, whatever, my first thought was who? Because like I don't understand who this is. I don't watch Leicester, so I don't really have an opinion on him as a manager, but just as an overall, I think I look like an idiot now from what I said last week about standards, because you can't have those same high standards when you're appointing an unknown manager that's, again, like you said, never managed in a top flight. So now it's kind of like, what are the expectations that this Chelsea board, what are they going to set for him? So I think he has to be given at least 2 years, because the expectations, it has to be on the floor right now for what they're actually thinking that he's going to do. But I don't like the signing, though, just based off the name alone. I have to get more familiar with his game before I could really give like an official opinion on it. But I think, there's so many other big name managers who are out there that Chelsea could have went and got. And then for it to end up being a Leicester City manager that you're going to have to pay them, $10 million for, and then hire his whole backroom staff and all this stuff. To me, it's an L signing for Chelsea. Even though
how could you say it's an L when you just said you don't know more of his game? Like, what is this whole thing about big names? What does big names do for you?
Well, so I prefer more so proven managers than experimental managers, especially when you're going to be at a big club. Like, to me, I don't really understand the whole notion of only wanting young managers and like that kind of thing that people bring up. So when I see the other names who are available, right, like a Thomas Tuchel or De Zerbi or like Conte, Mourinho, maybe even Zidane, right? I know that's like a long shot, but point is, there's bigger name managers out there that I think would have been better to go get than this Enzo guy. So that's why I don't like the signing, but they still have work to do this summer. I still am high on Chelsea, though. I think that next season they'll look better than they did this one, because I think that they're going to go out there and maybe do some better business. But yeah, for me, that wouldn't have been my first choice.
Let me just say something. This whole big name thing is a myth, bro. It's such a hype, bro. It's actually pathetic when people say big name, big name, big name. Because we could do the same thing with players. we can sit here, especially United and Chelsea in recent years. We can sit here and talk about how many big name players we signed that ended up not doing well for our club. And people said, "Oh, you know what? We need to stop. We need to stop just recruiting big names, the shiny toy, and actually go after players that fit the system, that fit the project, that fit what the manager wants. Go for profiles of instead of the big names. That should be the same thing you should be doing with managers. Because we just sit here. By the way, I'm not saying go get Maresca. This is not what I'm saying at all. Okay, but this is myth that managers who haven't managed in top flights don't deserve a job in a top flight yet. We can easily, bro. I can easily sit here and remind everyone that Pep Guardiola himself, when he got the Barcelona job, he was managing Barcelona B. So he never had La Liga experience, but he got the job, and we all saw how it turned out to him. Zidane himself was in what's it called, Madrid's second team. Then he became the assistant to Carlo Ancelotti, and then they gave him the job. Would anyone at that time, when Zidane got the job, forget the Zidane the player? Zidane as a player is great. As a name in management, Zidane was nothing as a name in management when he took over the Madrid job, and he ended up winning 3 Champions Leagues in a row. At the time, we could have all used the same argument with them, and it didn't
That's
work.
an L example.
That's not an L example. There's so many.
That's clearly an L example, because when you're taking over a team that has Ronaldo, Casemiro, Marcelo, like those world-class players, the expectations
actually
are
proves
for
my
you to
point
win.
even more.
It's the same thing with Barcelona when Pep came. You got Messi and all those guys that are in their prime.
No.
So
You're not gonna do that to me. You're not gonna do that to me.
Why
that
not?
Barcelona
I think,
team, that Barcelona team, when Pep took over at that year, he got rid of all the big names right away. Iniesta wasn't that Iniesta. Messi was a prospect, but Messi became Messi the minute Guardiola came in.
He got rid of Eto'o and Deku immediately.
Thank you. You remember that, Henry. In 2008, when we knocked them out, they got Pep and they absolutely redone that team. Pep actually helped some of these players become great the next year, because the first thing he did was get rid of Ronaldinho, Eto'o, and Deco and all these big names. Then he started relying on Xavi was already relied on, but the Iniestas and Messi more. He made Messi his main guy as soon as the Busquets, all that stuff. So these are all examples of managers who haven't proven anything in managerial in their managerial career until they take on a top flight team and they become that. By no means am I saying any of these managers we're talking about are about to be generational, because Pep is generational. That's what everyone tells me. They're like, "Oh, stop saying that because he's generational." No one thought Pep was generational when he took over. No one thought what's his name, Zidane was generational, took over. Even Arteta, you can use Arteta as an example, even though he hasn't won anything yet. But he's also done very decent, and he's playing very good football, and he's getting a team to compete for trophies every year. He's still to go over our line, but yeah, I get that. So I just gave you examples of managers who haven't done anything before they took over. Some of them won incredible stuff because Pep won a sextuple in his first year. Zidane did a three-peat with the Champions League. Arteta obviously didn't win anything, but they all did one thing, which is proof that they actually can manage in high-level footballs if they're given football clubs, if they're given a chance. McKenna could be one of them. Maresca could be one of them. There's so many teams that managers that could be one of them, and you will never find out until they get that jump. They don't necessarily all the time have to prove anything in the top flight to take on the job. Yes, it will take them time to prove that they're winners, but you don't need to just always say, "Have you managed top flight?" No, all right, I'm not hiring you. It's a myth, bro. It's not a true thing. It's actually a myth.
No, okay, but then now the expectations are for Chelsea. Now what? Because so they got to they got to a final last season, got to the semifinals, finished 6th. All right, you sacked Pochettino. So now what are you expecting this Enzo guy to do? That's why I'm saying that, because it's weird, because I don't really know what Chelsea are doing. It doesn't really seem like managerial. Yes, we don't know what this Enzo guy's going to do, but it doesn't really seem like much of an upgrade. So now for a club that usually do not give their managers any time, they're going to have to give him time. And it has to now work out, because you can't sack him after next season. That's why I would have went with a bigger name manager, somebody that's more proven, that could have maybe brought stability to the club. You already have a young squad there, so now why go bring in a young, unproven manager? Why not go bring in a manager that has a bigger CV?
I personally would, if I'm a Chelsea fan, I would want De Zerbi. If I'm a Chelsea fan, right? I feel like De Zerbi fits that squad more. But I wouldn't completely write off Maresca if he comes over just because he's only managed Leicester. No, he's done a very good job. And don't forget, this Leicester team, most of us agreed that this team was too good to get relegated. So he's managing a lot of Premier League quality players in that team. And there's a reason why they got back into the Premier League very easily. And you'll see, I most likely will predict that Leicester will stay in the Premier League next season anyways. So yes, he managed them in the championship, but he's managed some good quality players, because some of these players were too good to get knocked out anyway. To get relegated anyways. My point, as I'm trying to say, is yes, maybe De Zerbi is a better option. I agree with you if that's what you're saying, but it doesn't always have to be the big name. The big name does not actually translate into anything onto the pitch if you don't have the proper the proper structure on how to just have these players on the pitch and play in a certain way. Because Poch is a bigger name than Maresca, and we've seen his football wasn't good enough.
But
Maresca's played good
that's
football.
the issue I think Chelsea have. I think the issue Chelsea have is they have too many cooks in the kitchen. They have too many people messing up things. So and specifically when you look at the ownership or the CEOs, these guys are directly handpicking people. They're telling them they have to play certain players in certain positions. They're briefing the media that the reason why Pochettino was sacked was because he wanted too much control in the signings. Then they're briefing the media when Tuchel got sacked that they wanted to let him go because he didn't want to get involved in it and he just wanted to coach. And these other things, it just tells me that the job that the guy that they hired, I don't know this for a fact, but based on everything I'm seeing, I'm almost assuming that they hired somebody who's less qualified for the position in order they can control him a lot more and he can just sit back and do his job and they can do all the other things that they want to run. Because it looks like Pochettino, the difference that they had was not on the pitch, because at the end of the season, they came out and said, you know what, they wanted to get into Europe. After the season, they're talking about, no, we wanted to get top 4. He didn't reach the standards. If I'm not mistaken, their standards, at no point did Chelsea come out with a briefing to me or anywhere where I read throughout the whole season saying they demand top 4, a top 4 finish for Pochettino. It was always get back into Europe. From what I've
Can I ask you something?
Go on.
Did you know that when City signed Jeremy Doku last summer, Pep didn't know who he was? He said, "Who's this Doku guy?"
Yeah, but that's irrelevant to my point.
No, so this is why it relates to your point. You said they hired a manager so they can control him. Would you say the fact that they signed Doku without Pep knowing him, does that mean that Pep is being controlled in City? Or does
No.
that mean that they actually have a proper structure, that they have the recruitment people and they leave the coaching to Pep? Obviously, they consult him. I'm not saying like Doku just signed up to the locker room next day and he was like, hey, by the way, we signed this guy. We just didn't tell you about it. Obviously, he's been told. But he leaves the recruitment for the recruitment people. That's one thing we always praise City for. Why are we not giving Chelsea? Yes, I understand there's criticism to what they've done in the past couple of years, and they recruited too much. But why not we giving them a chance to actually prove like, hey, listen, we want a head coach to be just a head coach, and we'll keep the recruitment to the recruiting people. It doesn't necessarily mean that we're
I'm not actually bashing
we're
the
just
coach.
limiting to the job.
I'm not bashing the coach. I'm just bashing the way that Chelsea have been running for the last 2.5 years. Chopping and changing, constantly moving in different directions, never really giving anybody time or stability in the job. So then getting somebody who's unproven also is going to be divisive right away, because certain Chelsea fans will not want him. Certain Chelsea fans will right away be on his case if things go wrong. It's going to cause, it's almost like a poison chalice. Like I said, when Pochettino came in and when Graham Potter came in, the Chelsea job right now in the Premier League is probably the most toxic position to get into. And it's based on everything around there. And any manager who comes in there, they can sit back and say, I just want to coach. But if at the end of the year, if you get into an argument with the manager or the owners, you're out in 2 seconds. And if you don't reach some hypothetical targets that they keep changing every 2 weeks, you're going to get yourself sacked. I just think Chelsea at this moment in time, if they're going to hire somebody, trust them, give them the right tools and work with them and try to sit back and don't get too involved. Let the football people do their job. And if the coach says, I need this one player to help me out, maybe give it to him. Because Chelsea of old, the reason why they were successful, Roman Abramovich, as much as you want to criticize him for sacking managers, he constantly supported every single person who came into a T, maybe to a fault. But at the same time, he did support them and they did win.
Yeah, but even in that era, Igal, I think there's a balance here. I think we look at this managers wanting, or head coaches wanting control. I think we look at it all in a very polarized way. So you look at De Zerbi at Brighton. The more you read into him wanting control, it wasn't that he wanted to have complete power over everybody coming in and everybody going out. It's essentially he was saying, please stop selling all of my best players. I can't keep growing and developing a team if you're selling everybody. That's very different from wanting complete out and out control of a situation.
Tomatoes. You get what I mean?
No, but it isn't tomatoes. There is nuance to these circumstances. I don't think all your points are wrong, by the way. I don't. I'm not disagreeing. I'm just saying that when it comes to Chelsea wanting a manager they can control, Maybe it's because I'm a business owner that I don't have a problem with that, because I definitely want to control my employees. To a certain degree, there's going to be freedom within the role that you have, but you are still going to perform and do things in the way in which that me as the business owner want you to do them. Now, if you do get that a lot in 2024. Some people look at that as like a weird mind control, almost like an illegal thing. And it's like, no, it's just being employed, bruv. It's quite normal. Like if you go to McDonald's and they say flip the burgers, they're not treating you like a servant. They're treating you like an employee, right? And that's what Chelsea are trying to create. And Roman, if you go back and look at it, signed a number of players that the manager didn't ask for. Roman, if you go back and look at it, and the club bought players, like they were working on the Drogba deal ever before Jose was in as their manager. They used to do club signings. The reason why I think they have to adapt is because they're not the biggest fish in the pond anymore financially. So I think you've got to be more strategic with your planning, but you have to get that balance right. I think they can't have a manager that wants to run the show, but equally, they need someone that sees football in the same way as them. And I get where Staffy's coming from. I think that, this guy deserves a chance and an opportunity. The mistakes that I think Chelsea's board have made so far is they've picked the wrong person for one reason or another. In terms of they bring in Poch, within a year, Poch and them are sort of a clashing over their view of how to move forward. That's bad due diligence, by the way, from both sides. Because 12 months in, if your relationship has already gone south, there's a problem in that. That would be more my concern. And I've said it to Chelsea fans, the names they're linked to, I'm not really, not for me to be, I'm not like, oh my God, that's embarrassing for Chelsea. I don't really feel that way. I think that, there's some really talented up and coming managers in that set that could go to another level. Could go wrong as well, by the way. My concern if I was a Chelsea fan would be the people running my club getting it right and the direction that they're going in, because they've gone from experienced manager to relatively inexperienced in Potter, then to an experienced guy, now back to an inexperienced. It's the plan that I've got a concern with more than what they're actually recruiting. But that's my say.